Welcome to Ace Rodney Talks for the Superstars. Tonight.
Well, before we get into this one, let's take a moment for the nerdly numbers. Ready for this one? Only 12.7% of our viewers are actually subscribed. And on the Love and Business podcast, that is what we call an opportunity. So 87%-ish of people have the opportunity to subscribe. So I'm going to give you a moment, like I always do. Find that subscribe button. Now
Ding.
that you pressed it, ding, thank you so much for the sound effects. Now that you pressed it, we'll look for the meter to start to ring up as we get into a next badass episode. All right, here we are. Time for another episode of Love and Business. Let's get into it.
Yes, let's do it. And today I'm changing it up. So I have been training for an ultramarathon, which means I've been spending a lot of time on my feet. And during a lot of the times when I'm running or even just moving is when I have a lot of my creative energy and thoughts. And especially I'll notice on the longer workouts that are higher volume but less intense, because less of my brain power is going to the intensity of the workout, and I have it more of that brain energy and power to put towards other things. So I've just been milling and stewing on a bunch of different ideas. And typically what I'll do is I'll do like a voice note, or I'll try to write it down while I'm working out. And I just have all of these notes. And a lot of times they're just for me. I chew on them, I digest them, and then I'll reflect on them throughout relevant moments of my life where they apply. Mm-hmm. But I don't typically share them. And I'm thinking to myself, well, and typically I'm pulling these ideas and thoughts from podcasts that I'm listening to, or if it's just silence in my head, something pops into them. I'm like, well, if these are striking me and they're powerful and they mean something to me, then perhaps they could to other people. They probably will have an impact on someone. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, why not share them? And we typically don't do this because we like there to be some kind of structure. And this is just like a smattering ideas I've had during this training block. But as I was going through it, so they're just random concepts and thoughts and ideas, I'm still able to find like a common thread and principle through all of it. And then I further thought, well, in finding those commonalities, perhaps that points to what I value the most right now, or what is at least the most engaging and interesting to me. Because if it's striking me in a particular way and there are a bunch of these ideas that have a common theme, then it probably does mean it's something that I'm honed in on right now. So what I wanted to do is just go through some of them. And what I've done is on this piece of paper I've sent you of what I've just written down raw notes in my head. Mm-hmm. And just go through some of them and talk about these ideas and what they mean to me personally and why they struck me, get your input, and just bat it back and forth. Yeah. And also in the process, talk about some of these common threads throughout all of them.
So quick question. I want to just check in on something. Do you find that depending on where you are in a moment of evolution, because we've talked a lot recently about, some trials and tribulations. We've had certainly some bumps in the road. At least I can speak for me in saying that different things resonate with me based on where I am. Or maybe my brain will just capture it because it's relevant at that time, and something else could be said that would have been relevant another time and I would have grabbed onto. But whatever that could be, brief moment in time, whatever you're working on, does it seem to you that maybe they spring off the page a little more readily because of what else is going on?
Absolutely, yes. And also, I think some of these, and just in general, as I'm capturing a lot of these thoughts while I work out, some of them are overarching and I think resonate with me at all times, just in my life in general and how I like to lead my life. But then sometimes they're more specific to what is going on right now in this moment, and a year from now they may not resonate as much.
Yeah, agree. That's what I was thinking. That was my thought as you were setting that up.
So yes and no, both. I get both. Okay, so how do you want to do this? You want me to just run through them and we'll bat them back and forth?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
you take one, I'll take one. Any of the above. I think you will, and I'm sure we'll popcorn our audience. I will popcorn our audience to death.
Yes, you will. And that is what this is all about. So this is like Tim Ferriss has the random show.
Yeah, we're going
and
popcorn.
It's just random.
Right.
And that's okay because that's what we're choosing to do today.
Right. And so the audience knows popcorn means pew, pew, pew. Like that's what popcorn means.
That's exactly right.
And I'll do that to my team here at times where my head is flying and they have no chance of keeping up. It's not even fair. And they'll call me out on popcorn.
Because you explain 1 and 2 and not 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so no one knows how you arrived at what you are talking about.
Explain 1 and 2 here.
What?
Explain 1 and 2 here. What did you say? Explain 1 and 2? I'm
no,
sorry.
I said because you'll talk about. I'm talking about what popcorning means.
Oh yes, sure.
Jeez.
Well, I was already over here in a popcorn moment. You interrupted me.
Okay.
Okay, got it. Now they know what popcorn is.
Yes. All right. So here's one I heard recently, and I heard this on the Nick Bear podcast, which I've really enjoyed lately. But he was just paraphrasing someone else. It says, being a serial entrepreneur is only interesting at a cocktail party. I'm going to read 3 different things that I've heard and then talk about them as a group. So being a serial entrepreneur is only interesting in a cocktail party. Number 1, heard that on the Nick Bear podcast. Number 2, general ambition gives you anxiety. Specific ambition gives you direction. I heard that on the Chris Williamson's podcast. And then go deep, not wide. I heard that on the show Your Honor, which we've been watching. And when I was digesting and chewing on all 3 of these quotes, if you will, what is the commonality here is a laser focus, specificity, honing in on something, very niche. And like being a serial entrepreneur at a cocktail party, like it's saying you do a lot of things, but do you do anything well? Go deep, not wide. Like go in on that one thing as hard as you can. Spend all your energy, time, everything on that one thing. Go in, go deep. Don't spread yourself really wide and really thin. General ambition gives you anxiety. Specific ambition gives you direction, specificity. And I've really been thinking about this concept because I think for a while, specifically in business, I can get pulled in a lot of directions. And there are a lot of different opportunities that sound really amazing and intriguing. And I want to do all of these things. But I keep coming back to the idea that I believe to be the best and to really build something that is amazing, you've got to give all your focus to that one thing. Now, I'm not saying, like, for instance, this podcast, it's not our business, it's not what we do, but it is an extension of our business. As I'm talking about building a DC business, it's a sister company of our main business. So I think it's the one thing you're doing and also the things surrounding it that help enhance it. As we talked about, like stacking, what did we talk about? Like just stacking blocks, making that thing, the foundation stronger. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to remind myself right now, like, stay focused on the things that matter. And that is Tegeler construction and supply. And don't get distracted and blocked out the noise. And I felt recently, now that we are in a routine and almost a schedule with Moxie and getting my feet back under, like I feel really invigorated and ready to just like go in so hard. Not that I let my foot off the pedal, but just like get back in there and hone in and laser focus on the business and building it. And I do believe that is what ultimately is the difference between a good business and a great. And how you build that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, same thing. And I think if there are just maybe I'll even go a little bit just in a different direction. The things that would distract you from that, and I know there are times in our history, and this is with me at the helm. I don't know what my dad did or what. Yeah, he did this too. But times when things would get a little slow, or when it would seem like there wasn't quite enough demand, we might have tried a new trick or done something a little bit different or outside of our lane instead of going head down and identifying that demand, right? What a dumb thing to say. I don't think there's anybody else buying packaging materials. Bullshit. Right? I mean, and all right, so then get your act together and go figure out how to prospect and go figure out how to identify those people and then figure out how to get them into the boat. And I would say that most of those things that if we did attempt to nudge our lane out and it was wrong, we got slapped back into our lane naturally. And sometimes it was, we just said, oh boy, we didn't invite in ridiculous risk, but we recognized that it was too much of a stretch and it didn't fit. It absolutely didn't fit. So we got through it. We didn't let our customer down in the moment, but at the same time, we were behind the scenes saying, oh yeah, let's not do that again. And I think that is one of the things for some of our listeners, that you might get attracted or drawn away from that hyper-focused mission in moments like that. And I know we have, and in each situation, come back to center. And I think there is something good about it. It's recognizable because you see quickly that it stresses your resources, that it's not easy. And not to say that it always has to be easy, but you recognize the difficulty based on the resources or how inefficient you are at deploying them, which is what not slaps you back in your lane as much as you choosing to get back into that lane and saying, all right, now wait a minute. If there's a demand issue here, it's because we are not as fierce and going after that demand that is exactly our lane, right? We have packaging in our name. So go find it. Somebody's buying a box, go find them. And that's part of the things that, that could distract us away from that historically. And instead of doubling down and saying, oh, no. And by the way, depending on the cycles of the market, if you just go back a couple of years ago to the pandemic, there was huge supply imbalances. You couldn't get stuff. And that taught our organization and a lot of organizations such terrible, lazy behaviors because you got to sit back and raise prices and not generate units and not compete and not be out there in the hand-to-hand combat that is typical business. And you got paid great for it. And boy, that just creates these habits that are so bad and so harmful, and having to watch us reverse all of that garbage that got stuck in our filter has been really, really hard. And I think we're still in spots into it. Yeah. And then on the snapback, you have reduced demand, and then you have a supply glut. So what that means is that hand-to-hand combat is back on and prices are going down. So you have this spiral effect where it's like, holy hell, what's going on? Well, it's exponential because you're selling less for less. And we have had to undo some of that and get back to hyper-focused. And we've had to learn that hand-to-hand combat that we lost along the way. I mean, if you're a hunter and every time you walk outside, there's a bunch of food at your feet, how good of a hunter are you actually going to be? You're going to get lazy, and you're not going to be fierce, and you're not going to be relentless, and you're not going to learn the new tricks to eat before everybody else eats. And that's some of the laziness that creeps in and can also, back to this original point, is take your focus away from that niche. This one is really funny to me. Being a serial entrepreneur is only interesting at a cocktail party, right? I mean, and the good part about that is at cocktail parties, you get so surface, right? It's the opposite of our buddy Adam talking about going deep, not wide. At a cocktail party, you go wide,
you're right,
not deep. So
right.
Of course it's attractive, right? You don't actually have to back that with anything of any consequence. They're like, oh, that's great. That's great. I think I see the bar open, and then boom, gone. So yeah, that one's pretty funny to me.
And I think this goes back to that overarching principle we talk about all the time, which is just being disciplined to the consistency of like sticking with it. A lot of times it's the mundane things and staying in. And I think one thing I've identified about myself is that I can get sometimes I can misidentify like consistency with being boring. And I feel like I'm missing that creativeness that I need. But when I really think about it, and when anybody thinks about the business they're in, there are so many ways to get creative in your business. Our businesses, and I would say almost anyone's business, is so multifaceted. There is an unlimited amount of ways to get creative. You have no doubt you have competitors and you can find ways to be better, not necessarily that you're, but they're a driving force to be better and get creative and do these things. So I think to myself, I don't need to be doing X, Y, and Z and looking all over the place for ways to fill that creative void. I can dig deeper into my company, and there are so many things we could be doing differently and just like looking inside instead of outside externally, I think is what I've really been thinking about. And I'm really excited to just like get back in and just drive in going deep.
Yeah, I had a meeting or two ago. I was frustrated with the team, and it was some of these lazy habits that we had picked up, and we had a situation in the plant where we had designed. I'm going to get sorry, audience is boring for a moment, but we needed to do a better job in the plant, so we designed some fixtures and templates. Doesn't need to go any deeper than that. But the key is we didn't finish them, and a lot of conversations in our company about football, right? I just love the football field visual, and I'll use it to describe the selling cycle. If you find a prospect because you drive by a big building and you go knock on the door, that's akin to starting on your own zero, and you have to run full 100 yards to score. And I was frustrated, and in the meeting identified a few instances, like 3, where we didn't finish. I mean, we stopped working on the 5. And my message was, not only do I not want you to stop working on the 5, I want you to pound that effing thing into the goal line, and I want you to throw the ball into the 30th row. That's how I want you to finish. And back to your point about the creativity inside of your business, and if you have good competitors, you better be curious and innovating, and you better be doing it on the fly, or you're going to get caught from behind. And my other message to them was, skate to where the puck is going. All right, well, what if you actually are there waiting for it? That's the next step, right? I mean, you don't want this. You don't want to, if you're slow, you're going to miss it. Skate to where it's going here, but let's take it one step further. Let's be there waiting for the puck. That's how we are anticipating the business, and we are anticipating the needs of the customer. And Amazon does a great job of this, of knowing what they want before they want it. And we don't have that level of technology and AI and the digital tools that they do to mine their data. But we've got a pretty good idea. The good part is neither do our competitors, right? So I don't have to outskate Bezos. I have to outskate the other people in the packaging world at this moment. And just some things that's come up is, in my frustration in getting the team back together from some of these lazy habits that we're still exhibiting in spots that frustrate me. Relentless. That's the opposite of relentless. Like, you would never stop driving your legs until you ran underneath the goalposts and then fired it up into the crowd. Mm-hmm. That's the vision that I have of finishing.
Great segue into the next group of ideas that we have written down here. And the common thread amongst these, as a segue to what you just said, is it's hard work, and that's just something I know you and I just value more than anything. It's just the good old-fashioned hard work. But more specifically, I've been realizing lately that I really value like the discomfort and like sometimes the fear and the pain in hard work, and not just getting to the finish line, but actually working towards very specific progression milestones and then appreciating those, not just like what that outcome is. And I know that sounds cliche, like enjoy the journey, but right. I truly mean that in like looking at those, like every little pain point and challenge, and then like appreciating when you get there and what's the next one, and not just what it looks like after you get from A to Z. It's like the B, C, D, E.
Well, would that be to say that you would do it in a way that was repeatable and sustainable?
Yes. Yeah. And I think if you're always looking towards like the big goal, it's very hard. Like as you always say, what is it? One side elephant, your elephant quote.
Oh, yeah. Eat it one bite at a time.
Eat it one bite at a time. And I think that's just another way of, like, if you have these progression milestones, of actually getting to the end thing, because it's just more manageable and more sustainable. So starting with the first one, I'm going to start here. Well, actually, this is one I don't even have written down, but I'll start here. It's disassociating, and this is an idea, your feelings with the work. And I heard an ultramarathoner talking about this, and he said, actually, I think he was it doesn't really matter, but I think he was a triathlon professional athlete. And he had high volumes of work every day, just miles and miles and miles and hours of bike rides and runs and swims. And he said he had these mental blocks with some of his workouts. But what he was able to do was disassociate his feelings with the work. And I was just talking about how I adopted that mentality. And it has really allowed me, it doesn't make the workout easier, but it has helped me break some of those mental barriers. Like for some reason, I have a mental barrier on a steady state long distance run as compared to, I could run a longer run, but if it's a tempo and it's got different terrains, for some reason that's easier for me, like mentally. But now I've tried to say, okay, the workout is the work. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. Just like go get it done. And that's actually helped. As trivial and funny as that sounds, it has helped. And so it's just about like getting the work done and not assigning or ascribing is the right word, your feelings to that particular, and I'm talking about workouts, but it could be the work.
Oh, yeah.
And then also what really plays into this is the magic you are looking for is in the work you are not doing. Because it's a lot of times it's that workout or it's that work that you're not doing that is the most critical piece that is going to be a big part of the progress and where you want to go. And I think those tie very nicely together, and I also really resonate with that. I know there are so many things that I procrastinated on or I push back because they're hard or they're challenging, but I also know that is the very thing I need to be doing. So I do think there's something to disassociating your feelings and just doing the work.
Yeah, I'm going to
which is hard.
Yeah, I'm going to give you an example. Tell me if this works, because there's one thing you didn't hit on yet. Is it like the things you like to do as well? Because I'll give you an example. We were in a meeting the other day, and as part of our executive meeting, we will actually call out team members. What we call it is team members in need of support, which is a really nice way of saying they're not doing the best job in spots. And I watched two teammates talking about an individual, and one was having a great experience, and the other one was having the exact opposite experience with this person's performance. And it came down to what the person in question liked. One of my teammates was interacting with that individual on things that they liked, and the other one wasn't. And they were having two different experiences. So back to what you said is, like, I know, for example, when you're running intervals and that type of a workout, sprints and speed and slow and this and that, that's way more exciting for you than the distance stuff. And so I know you like that better than you like the distance stuff.
Well, I'm even saying even if it's a long distance, but there's different tempos it could be longer distance, but there's different terrains and different tempos, and it's that's
the same mundanity that you're talking about in business at times too, right? And I know we've talked a lot on our podcast about small changes executed over long durations have massive benefits, and but you're right. But in the moment, it sucks. Like to be able to hold that thought when you're just bored or you don't like it or you just simply don't like it. And if I think, that I apply that to me directly and the rest of the world, I am very guilty of passing on tasks that I don't love, and there's certain parts of the business that I love. Like I'll get the ratchet and turn that wrench. That the accounting thing? Yeah, I don't really have time for that. But meanwhile, I'll turn a wrench. And I think that like piece, and I will then, if you end up prioritizing based on like, that's dangerous. Very dangerous. And will get you in trouble, ultimately. It
is. And one of the things I hate the most doing is like review of contracts. And you could arguably say, well, that's one of the most important things you have to do in your business. If you want to make money, you have to first review and then sign contracts. So that is one of the most critical things I can do, yet I don't like it, and I tend to procrastinate on it. With the DC business, there's so much paperwork I haven't done, and it's not moving forward because I am ascribing these feelings like, I don't like this, I don't want to do this. if you can, and it's so much easier said than done, but if you can take all that feeling out and like, this is just what you have to do. That's it.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. And if
Interesting, right?
And if you were to attack it first in, first out, imagine if you only attacked first in, first out versus looking at this big lump of things to do and picking from the pile, the ones that were liked, most comfortable, interesting, whatever those. I mean, I've talked about this a lot. No one likes to sit down and create a good spreadsheet like me if I'm trying to dig into data or extract intel from it and make choices. Man, I will pick that over any number of things. But that's not right. That's actually wrong. And to your point about contracts, geez, there is the one side about the business. There's also the risk mitigation, right? So it almost has this bomb feel to it. You know, do it correctly, win. Do it incorrectly, invite in a bunch of risk and maybe have a bomb on your hands.
Right.
Like it's about as diametrically opposed as possible. Yet you still lack at it and go, man, I know how important that is, but there's probably 3 things on here I can get done real quick. I'll just do these real quick.
But,
yeah,
but when you remove that emotion, it also removes just some, I think, of mental taxation. Like you're taking all that mental energy out. Like you're take that mental stress out. You're just doing it.
Well, think about the relief on the other side. I mean, I can tell you that the relief on the other side of those grueling, what I view as those grueling pieces of my life, I probably have more. More pleasure out of their completion than I do the other parts, which is crazy to say. Like, well, why don't you do that? Because I'm not smart enough to actually look at the end game of it. I'm still stuck on the front.
Well, a lot of times we spend more time procrastinating than we would have just we'd spend more
doing.
Than it would have just to do the thing.
Yeah, I know.
So, again, easier said than done, but it has helped. It has helped me in this, at least in this, like specifically in this training block. The other one we have here is get comfortable in your weaknesses. And I think part of this goes back to appreciating every milestone, every little progression. And I'm going to get specific with all this. So as I'm working towards running 31 miles, when I first ran outside, postpartum, I told you 3 miles. I'm not kidding. 3 miles outside, I was so hard. And I was like, how the hell am I going to do 31 miles? I signed up for it before I realized how hard it was going to be postpartum.
But meanwhile, for the audience, you had actually run quite a few more miles of that on the treadmill.
I had run at least 10 to 12 on the treadmill.
So you didn't even see that coming, right?
Yeah,
Because certainly 12 on the treadmill should equate to a lot more than 3 on the road.
Yeah, but just know the elements and the elevation and just the different muscles
terrain.
And just not having done it in a year, after having Moxie. So I didn't see it coming. But every week there's been so much progression, and I always think, like, even if I don't finish the 31 miles, which I'm going to, but even if I don't, man, what are those miles? And now I've run 10 miles outside. I'm a better runner. Just like every milestone I've hit, I can look back and be like, well, over these 5 months, these are all the things I did accomplish. And had I not been working towards the bigger goal, hit that goal or not,
right,
all of these things would have never happened. Mm-hmm. And that's really hard to recognize. I would say, especially if you don't achieve your end goal that you set out to do, it's easy to forget about all of the other things you did in that training process or the build up or the lead up, whether it's in work or athletic endeavor or personal life. But man, like, look at all those things that you've done, that the person that didn't set that goal, well, they didn't do any of those. They didn't hit any of those milestones.
Sure.
And that's really, that appreciation and reflection piece is really hard, but I've been definitely making that a focus, and it makes the whole process more enjoyable because it gives you some, like, these moments of like accomplishment and pride. And I think that's really important to sustain like a big effort.
Yeah, and I'll since I'm not in the process of running 31 miles.
Wait, this could be applicable to anything.
I get it. So that's why I'm going to flip it just a little
please.
bit. When I read this, the exact statement is get comfortable in your weaknesses. What came to mind for me was, and then I just made a couple notes under that said, one, and be very willing to share them. And be able to do it in a vulnerable way. And by vulnerable, we never mean whiny, right? It just means to be able to have the courage to articulate to somebody, and it could be a teammate, that is not your skill set. Mm-hmm. And then once you're able to get your brain around that, then you might decide that you need to invite an awesome teammate in, right? And let's just say you were putting together a team of runners and to go out for a multifaceted competition, which is what business is, a multifaceted competition. You'd be like, you know what, that distance thing, not so much. I'm going to find a Tommy because Tommy is a killer in distance and he can run that event. And I'm going to do this event. And business is exactly that, right? I mean, this is just a collection of events that are going on real time. And I think the faster you can recognize which ones you either don't have the skills for, or maybe you have zero interest, right? You're allowed to have zero interest in a certain event in your business. The faster you recognize that, the faster you can go get a player to run those plays. Mm-hmm. And the faster you can stop sucking at that part of the overall event that is business. So that's what came to mind for me, where I just say, yeah, that's not me, right? Mm-hmm. And if I'm going to build a team and I'm a fantastic shortstop, then let's not get another shortstop. Let's find a great first baseman, and that's how you would build that around. That was the takeaway for me, is being able to recognize and be comfortable in outsourcing that part of it to somebody else that's a trusted advisor inside of your organization. That was my business takeaway of that statement.
That made me think of something I heard recently, because what you're saying points to. The beginning of that was like an accountability, be vulnerable, be honest in what you're good at, or what you're trying to do, and speak that out loud. And I think that has an accountability feel to it. But there are two sides of that argument. So I've heard one that says, speak your goals out loud, what's the word? Journal about it or blog, whatever. Speak it out loud because it keeps you accountable. And I've started doing that with the running, and I think it does really work for me. Like, it keeps me accountable, especially because I train solo, so it's not like I have accountability partners physically like running with me. But I've heard another side of the spectrum, and I forget who this was that was talking about this, and this was a study that said a lot of people that talk about their goals, if they're surrounded by a lot of people that are, especially like yes men, they say, oh yeah, you're going to write a book. You should definitely write a book. That's awesome. And they feel so good about the encouragement and the support they get that they say a lot of things and they don't actually do the thing because they get what they were looking for in the initial.
Because they're looking for the validation.
They
weren't actually looking for the goal that they shared with the world.
That's exactly right. So there are. It has been proven there are many, many people that say all these things they're going to do, which makes me think of like a serial entrepreneur, and they just get that initial validation and support and encouragement and feel great about it, and then lose the ultimate motivation to do the thing.
Right. Boy, that was an interesting introspective moment where you realize that you were just sharing it to get the validation from the person across the table or whatever it was. Like, okay, good. They said I should write a book. Never going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that would be. I don't think people are sitting there realizing it.
But I promise you now, when I vocalize goals or I say something out loud, I'll be checking myself to make sure I actually am going to follow through. Or maybe I'll ask myself before I vocalize.
Well, for me, it's definitely accountability. Like it holds me accountable. But I think everybody's different. I think in that regard.
Yeah, I want to touch on one here that we didn't have, Mark, because I think it's so pertinent. One here is we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. I feel like our podcast is a lot about that. I mean, I'd like to think for our listeners that we scratch some new ground or someone walks away and says, that's interesting. I've never heard that anywhere in my entire life. That would be great. But I imagine there's also a lot of moments here where we are reminding people, and if they're in a situation like we just recently talked about, in this moment of evolution, wherever they are, that something that we say sticks because it matters right now, and they take it and go and do something with it. So I know we didn't have that one highlighted, but the more we talked, I thought, yeah, I'm sure we are reprocessing some ideas here, but man, there's sometimes that I've heard it before and it just got out of my vision or my purview, and pulling it back in was really valuable for what I was working on at that time.
And in life, I think so much of it is about being reminded or just having the discipline to do what we know is right. Because, take nutrition. Most of us don't need to be taught what to do. Most of us know generally, like,
if it tastes good, it's bad for you?
I mean, generally the
pretty
rules:
close.
fruits, vegetables, proteins, whole foods, like less processed foods, a lot of water, hydrate, like the basic principles. Most people know.
In today's world, yes, I think that ignorance is a problem of yesterday as it relates to that. I mean, I think because at least in today's world, regardless, let's do that, regardless of your socioeconomic class, that phones have now proliferated the vast majority, right? And whether you have an iPhone 1 or an iPhone 21, you do have access to that information if you're willing to go seek it and then to execute or deploy on it in some fashion. So I think if there's something I love about that, I don't love everything it's brought, but it is is eliminating what could be ignorance around certain topics. But you still have to execute, right?
Well, that's what people aren't doing.
That's
they
exactly
know.
right, yeah, 100%.
Or we know. I should include myself in that.
Yeah, the discipline to actually deploy that type of diet and or exercise, for example, is where the rubber actually meets the road.
So much of this comes back to simplicity. Like I value just simplicity, and I think in business, in everything. Gosh, we were just talking about nutrition. That's a perfect example. Everything is made to be so complicated, and I really do believe that a lot of the best in the world at anything have just found a way to make it very, very simple.
What do you think the motivation behind that is? Just thinking about it out loud for a second. I mean, is it because that smoke and mirrors does what, right? If the opposite is simplifying is to make it overcomplicated for some reason, but to what end? You'd only do that if you were deriving some benefit from it. What is that? I haven't stopped to think about it. I'm actually just yakking about this.
I'm
real
sure
time.
there's multiple. Multiple reasons for this. I mean,
you can create excuses. That would be one that comes to mind, right?
If you
overcomplicate it.
So you can seem smarter. So you can seem like you're needed in a situation. Like, well, this is really complicated, and you wouldn't necessarily understand that. So
thank God
I
I'm
need
here.
to be included.
Right.
I also just think that's how some people's brains work, and that's just their natural inclination to overcomplicate. And I've just found a lot of value and what's the word? Just I look at everything now. Just what is the most simple, easiest way I can break it down and just to the bare roots and just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Like that is with everything I've been doing. Like don't overcomplicate. As we talk, just get the thing done. Don't overcomplicate any of it. Just keep it very simple. In fact, I quote in here a lot. I think recently I've really been listening to Nick Bare's podcast, and he's the owner of BPN Supplements. And I've always respected the guy, but I did not enjoy his podcast a while ago because I thought it was so simple-minded, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I would listen to it and be like, okay, like, duh, everybody knows this stuff. But I've come to actually really appreciate it, and now it's one of my favorites. And everything he does and says seems so simple to me, but I think he's actually got it. Like he's figured out a way, like these are simple principles or these are simple things in life, and he keeps coming back to them and finds different like anecdotal stories in his own life and always tying it to these like basic principles. And now I love it. But before I was thinking, wow, that's oversimplification.
Right.
I don't know if there is a thing anymore. Like now I just, the easier you can make it, the more simple, the better.
Right. You're almost experiencing it, or the approach was, it's not complicated, so it's not of value. Which is the exact opposite of how you would prefer to experience it.
I mean, with every day, I just appreciate it more.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And the beauty of that is if you think about teams and teams you work with, how much more communicable it is. I had to really think about that word.
Yes.
Right. And I will say, someone said something to me the other day. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but they said, you have a way of making complex things seem easy. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a lot of art in that. If you can take that and you can articulate it in a way that you can invite the masses in. Mm-hmm. And by that I mean as many people as possible that can help you get where you want to go.
Yep.
That's the reason to get it to that level of digestibility, is so that you can invite as many people in as humanly possible and have them be successful too.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Another common theme or thread, whatever, however you both theme and thread, that I found amongst a lot of the premises and concepts that I'm really holding on to lately is truth. And let me explain what I mean by that. So as I read through here are a couple that relate to this. So tell the truth. It's easier to remember. Let's see. Choose the right over the easy hard, or choose right over easy. Here's a question posed by Cody Sanchez. How many stances have you taken that are counteractive towards your best interest because they are right? And there's a lot of quotes that I'm holding on to in there. So there's something in like the valuing of just finding the truth and being honest. And I'm also like taking a stance and taking a position and believing in something. Like that overarching principle, I keep holding on to. I'm not sure why. Like certainly telling the truth is important, but I think getting to the root of the truth in business and just being so honest in all situations, that's really hard. Mm-hmm. Like I keep coming back to that, and with not just with other people, with yourself. Like being honest, seeing through every facade, and also the idea of like believing in something and taking a hard stance and a position and a belief. In this day and age, that's hard to do.
It is.
Because you're either torn down or you don't want the backlash. And it's like, I choose a side and I believe in this and I'm going to be honest about it. And this is truly who I am. And that feels really just right to me and resonates a lot right now.
Yeah. So one thing that hit me when you were talking was, as it relates to the truth, it does also go back to that simplicity piece, right? It's very easy to remember the truth. Mm-hmm. I mean, and spinning tales, and certainly right now, in the political season, which we're in, and this is just an observation, not a political statement. If you watch what goes on, and the amount of clips that are of a candidate, for example, saying 17 different things mm-hmm. on the same topic. Well, yeah, my gosh, if you didn't actually select the truth and represent it all the way through, it's impossible to remember it. And man, that's the opposite of simplicity. It's exhausting. And I can't even really tell if they cared to get the truth right or to remember what they actually believe in or if they ever believed in it.
Yeah.
Or if that's today's answer based on the way the polls have shifted. I don't even know. But I know it's excruciating. I know it's exhausting. And for me as a leader, it would take up so much bandwidth. I would be out of energy by the time I had to do something. It would be awful. And you're right. I think it takes a lot of courage now to get into certain places. And I will tell you, I have things I want to articulate on social media, which would be LinkedIn in the business world. I will tell you, there are times that I'm biting my tongue in certain areas. And it is, and I'm honest about this, it is because I don't necessarily, I don't know. I don't want to piss off that massive customer or something, or I don't want to get too close to something that's incredibly polarizing, even though I might feel strongly about it. And I don't mean polarizing in a mean way. I just mean it could be quite counter to the current at any given time. And I will keep that between us, right? Or I'll share, like your dad and I were talking about, I'll just say, immigration policy mm-hmm. came up, and we just had I just said, I just gave my observation of it and something that I thought about it, and it was cool, right? It was actually great to, I'm not sure if we were aligned on the conversation or not. We listened to each other. It was great. We had a great time. I'm talking about it, so it mattered. But I think it's really hard. It's unfortunate that we can't just have this free flow of ideas and everybody would tell the truth. Back to that piece, right? And in that journey, every single person would tell the truth, and you know exactly who they are, and they never have to get caught in some track because they only ever represented what their truth was the whole time. It would make everything so much easier. And then take that to the business world. Imagine that you're trying to lead an organization. I think we have 81 people here now. Imagine that I'm trying to constantly remember what my truth is. Mm-hmm. Like, I would expect people to be running out the front door as fast as humanly possible. They should want to get off of that ship immediately.
I think a lot of innovation comes from contrarian thinking. And yeah, there's something about finding like that kernel of truth of who you really are. And I can't stand like, I just want to tell my truth. It just sounds so hippy dippy to me. But I really mean like who you are. Because I think the people that are really able to unlock that and unleash that unabashedly and just do it, that is the difference. Like that's the difference. And those are the people that make a difference in the world. And it's really just very challenging to do. And I was thinking to myself, I'll go back to the running thing. Like I love it and I want to do great at it. But if I were to compare myself to everybody else in the running world, the people towing the line at the Olympics, like why would I even do it? Mm-hmm. They're running distances that are 10 times as long, 2 minutes per mile faster. Right. Like why would I even try? But it's because like that is what's really speaking to me. And I might not be the fastest and I might not be able to run the furthest, but if I stay true to myself, I could bring a different, I have different goals, a different personality to it, just some kind of nuanced thing that is special and impactful in that space. And if you think Elton John talks about how he listened, I remember the musician he listened to when he was 14 years old, but he listened to him and he said, at that moment in time, I almost walked away because I said, this guy's too good. Like, how would I ever? I am embarrassing to the music industry. Right. Think about if he had just walked away. Sure. But he stayed true to just like, this is the thing that meant the most to him, that got him going. That was like the fire in his belly. So it's just like finding that thing and the truth in us and then being true to them and finding like, this is it. And regardless of if you're good or you're not good at it, it's just like being honest about it.
And talk about a guy that literally blazed his own trail, right? Can you imagine if we didn't have an Elton John?
Yeah.
That'd be awful. And we wouldn't know, but that'd be horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely
yeah.
horrible.
Well, we love Elton John. So anyway,
I knocked my drink over. I was so worried about a world without Elton John. Jesus. I'm going to cry my water over here today.
So yeah, that's just
seem to me but you lived your life.
But
no, sorry, not appropriate.
But it's interesting because I didn't on the surface, or I haven't really thought much about this. But as I'm looking at all these things I'm writing down, it's interesting what I've come to realize is on my mind right now, or what's most like hitting me or the most meaningful, because I never really thought about it. But once you write all these things down in your head, you're like, wow. Because when you're running, it's like that something about like clarity, not to clear your mind, as I heard Nick Bear pose. Like running isn't to clear your mind, it's to get clarity of your thoughts.
Right. Well, at some point, your body is in such pain and agony that it starts to reach for different things to keep it going. I mean, because I'm sure, right, that's probably after mile like 3 or 4 or 5 when.
Oh yeah, right? But it's also like I do better, I think, on the lower intensity days when I have a little bit more like brain power. I'm not, all my energy isn't going towards the workout. On days like that, I'm probably not thinking about this stuff. It's about like the higher volume, lower intensity days.
Right.
So anyway, are there any others on here or anything else you'd like to add? I mean, we've got a bunch on here, but I try instead of just being all over the place, I try to somewhat put them into buckets that felt like they made sense.
I'll just give a quick shout out. When I read number 11 on here, clean up your room before you try to clean up the world. That just harkened me back to one of my favorite speeches, which was Admiral McRaven, and his book is Make Your Bed, and that's what resonated with me. If you're a listener and you haven't read the book Make Your Bed, you have to read the book. It's fantastic, and it's back to that simplicity. It is a 10-step simplistic process that he borrowed from Navy SEALs training, which is so pertinent. I've watched, and if you want to do it easy like me, because you can't really read, then you go to YouTube and you watch the address he gave to the University of Texas in their graduation speech, in which he talked about the 10 pieces of Make Your Bed. So I love that one because that resonated with me, with starting every day by making your bed. And if you come home and you had a shitty day, at least you made your bed.
Mm-hmm. The last one we'll leave off, and this one didn't fit neatly into a bucket, and that's okay because it doesn't have to.
We'll use it to sign off then.
Yeah. A rich man has a million problems. A poor man has one.
I totally agree with that. That doesn't mean financially either. That means
Oh,
That means all of the types of wealth.
I think of health in this situation.
I think of relationships.
But that's a good one to end on because it does spark a feeling of gratitude and appreciation, and those are nice feelings to. Well, this drops on a Wednesday, so a midweek gratitude.
Yeah, always. I think you and I are big on gratitude and being thankful for what we have. So that was fun, boy.
It's a good reminder.
Agree. Anytime you want to do popcorn days, I am your wingman for popcorn days.
Let me just finish this off. So I have a lot of these, and it's hard. Like when I'm running, I'm sweaty, and a lot of times, like I can't even get these down, or it's too intensive of a workout. But I really am. These are special to me. Like it's when I do my best thinking. Sometimes it's for people in their shower or their cars. Like this is it for me. And I think these ideas that we have, they mean something, and they're important to share. And why would we just let them sit on paper?
Totally agree.
Like let's talk about it. So maybe every few weeks we do what we're calling this random show, and we go through some of these. And they don't have to be in perfect buckets. Just like what resonates at the time, what's meaningful, and perhaps they'll be meaningful for other people, or they'll at least be thought-provoking.
Absolutely. Look, we talk about this platform as a megaphone, so I think these are great megaphone items. And if somebody grabbed one nugget and took it with them, then that's exactly why we drop in here and do this.
That's exactly right.
All right. Cheers to that. That was
Cheers.
awesome.
Ding.
Thank you as always, Tommy.
Yes, thank you, Tommy. Something I haven't mentioned to date is I do have a Instagram page where I've been documenting the training for the Ultramarathon paired with the postpartum journey. And it's been for me, for an accountability account. I have very little followers and I follow very little people. But if you are interested in just following the Ultramarathon journey and the training, and that's something that resonates with you, give it a look-see. Britt Tegeler Arnold, I believe, is the handle. I should know that. I'll know that for next time. But just look up. Just it'll be in the video. You can click on it. Thanks to our great producer, Tommy, who will help us with all of our shortcomings in memory.
And you can follow me on MySpace. That'd be the handle On The Bogey Train, at On The Bogey Train on MySpace. Look for me there. I'll be hitting one out of bounds whenever you need me.
Thank you for subscribing. We truly do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. See you soon.
Welcome to Ace Rodney Talks with the Superstars. Tonight, guest, the incredible